Assalamu alaikum listeners, my name is Irfan Bhatti and the program is Pakistan's Economic Preview and Introduction to PRMIA and Risk Management. We have in our studio Mr. Farzand Ali, who is the Deputy Regional Director PRMIA Lahore Islamabad Chapter. And first of all, I would like to ask Mr. Farzand Ali, please tell us about PRMIA, what PRMIA stands for.
PRMIA stands for Professional Risk Managers International Association. It's a not-for-profit independent association. We have a global presence in 65 different chapters and it's basically a member-led and driven member-elect the board, and we have 77,000 members in 192 countries with 1,500 plus members in PRMIA Lahore Islamabad chapter in Pakistan. And last year we organized 119 local risk events and 14,000 unique registered participants. So unique in terms of what PRMIA is, just gives you a brief of it's a not-for-profit independent association, and what we stand for. Basically, the aim for PRMIA is to professionalize the risk industry by providing certifications, trainings, and development of the human capital, shaping the professional standards and intellectual agenda of risk management, bridging the gap between the industry and the academia, and embedding risk management in the corporate culture. This is something which is one of the, you can say, very hardcore objective of the PRMIA, is that we have to embed the risk management framework into our corporate culture, bringing people and idea together from across the cultures and different sectors. So, in terms of if you see the global presence and the chapters and the membership, if you see all the 77,000 plus members we have, the portfolio-wise, they all have a very diversified backgrounds. People from financial industry, people from academia, and people from other business sectors. So they all actually are sort of the main body, which actually comprised of the PRMIA global body, which we call it today. And why PRMIA is because it gives you a global platform. We're leveraging worldwide network which benefits in training and professional development and developing standards for excellence in risk management, and more rigorous and you can say the risk management industry. We have a certification programs and training programs for the staff to be trained in this particular discipline, which is something which is key, you can say, objective of the PRMIA. Since when we talk about developing the human capital, we talk about providing the risk management trainings and conducting seminars, awareness sessions. And this is what PRMIA Lahore Islamabad chapter is doing from last 1 year since its inception in 2011. We have organized in Pakistan, we have organized events in Lahore and in Islamabad region, primarily to sort of create the awareness among the academia and industry and in the financial sector, to synthesize the people about the risk management. What are the benefits this unique domain brings into the business. And one of the key, you can say, goal was to bridge the gap between the risk management professional and the academia. This is something which, since being working in academia, and also I've worked in the past I've worked in the financial sector, I have seen that there's quite a lot of gap between the actual risk management practices and what is being taught in the academic sectors. So one of our key objective is just to sort of introduce risk management as a discipline in the academia, and also at the same time in the industry. We should develop the standards and develop the risk management models for the organizations so they can incorporate those models into their own corporate cultures. So this is primarily what are the objectives and what is the rationale behind the PRMIA Lahore Islamabad chapter. And this is what you can say is the brief introduction of the PRMIA.
Okay, Mr. Farzand, when we talk about Pakistan's economic preview, when we talk about Pakistan's economy, will you please brief us the economic indicators and their performance?
Yes, if you see the main Pakistan's economic indicators, our GDP for last year was, if you see that it was 488 billion GDP per PPP, we call it per capita, and GDP growth for last year, which was 2011, and it was only 2.6%. GDP per capita nominal was $1,254 So, and GDP by sector, if you see, the major contributor was service sector was 53.4% of the total GDP. Industrial sector contributed 25.4%, and agriculture 21.2% of the total GDP sector. Inflation for the last year, as per government of Pakistan's figures, it was between 16 to 17%. And population below poverty line. This is another key economic indicator. What we see here is 24% of the people are living below the poverty line. When we go to the further to the program, we'll explain to you what is the government figure and alarming discrepancy among especially in the United Nations Human Capital Report, and they have their own figures. Their calculation model is different from the government of Pakistan one, but their figure is quite alarming. Similarly, we have a labor force is around 56 million, and unemployment is 6.2% for the last 2011. This is estimated. Main industries we have in Pakistan is textile and apparel, food processing, pharmaceutical, construction materials, paper production, and fertilizer.
Mr. Farzand, what is the present state based on these key economic indicators?
If you see the GDP growth and inflation and unemployment, these are the three key economic indicators. We give you a pretty fair understanding of what is the present state. So we can, if you see these figures, that the growth was only 2.6%. Inflation is touching 16 to 17%, and similarly, if you see the unemployment is 6.2%, so the present state is very weak. We call it weak growth because of persistent inflation and ever-rising pressure of balance of payments, because since government is borrowing money from different sources, so the pressure of paying back, and especially the paying back not just the main amount but also the interest, is ever-rising pressure. Deteriorating the security situation is another key factor which is hampering this situation, because your FDI is going down because of the security situation, and secondly because of the poor performance by the different you can say public sector enterprises. That is another thing which is sort of keeping away local investors also from investing within the Pakistan. So all in all, the present state is very poor because of the poor GDP growth and high inflation and deteriorating security situation in the region as a whole. You see in Pakistan and Afghanistan, all these matters, key, you can say, areas of macroeconomic factors which are actually playing a key role in this particular weak performance.
Mr. Farzand, will you please tell us what are the main causes for this bad situation?
The major causes for this particular economic situation are poor service delivery by the government. Agriculture sector subsidies, they are also hampering the overall growth. Enormous loss-making subsidies to the public sector enterprises, energy sector subsidies, and poor governance, and in terms of corruption and lack of accountability. And then there's a decline in exports because of this energy crisis and higher poverty rate. According to, as we discussed earlier in the interview, that according to the government of Pakistan, 24% of the people are living below the poverty line. According to United Nations Human Capital Report of 2011, approximately 50% are living below the poverty line in Pakistan, so which is very, very alarming. Their calculation for poverty rate is different from the government of Pakistan, but still, if you see the discrepancy, it's almost double of what government of Pakistan is saying. And because of this energy crisis, even the government is paying subsidies to the energy sector, but because of this energy shortfall, the decline in export is a major cause. It's because we are based on Pakistan economy is a textile and primarily textile-based products, and because of this energy crisis, these exports been hit very badly. If you see, in terms of potential, first thing first, Pakistan has a great geostrategic location advantage, and we have India on one side, and we have China on the other side, and we have Middle East in the south, and up in the northern side we have Afghanistan and Central Asian states. So yes, we have a great geostrategic location advantage, and it's a great potential. Natural and human resources, we are one of the few countries in the world who has been gifted with all kind of natural resources. And similarly, if you see the human resource, we are a young nation 50% of our population is below the age of 20, so which makes us a young country. Expansion in the regional trade is a huge potential, and diversification of the export base, because we have been primarily cotton and textile product export base, so we can sort of diversify our exports into shifting our main key focus from cotton and textile products to livestock and agri-based products. Being an agriculture country, we haven't been optimally utilized the true potential of this nation. So this is something, we have to diversify our export base. Maybe attract FDI from abroad, and not just FDI from the overseas, but also within the country itself. We have to sort of create the environment where local investor who is willing to invest, but because of these macroeconomic factors, they are not being sort of willing to invest, in other terms one can say. So we have to sort of create those policies and create an environment where people are willing to invest in the local sector, and the returns are very, very lucrative.
Okay, Mr. Farzand, how can we put our economy back on track? The suggestions and the recommendations.
We say that, first thing first, government have to, put their own house in order. And for that, we have to do the institutional reform. And all the public sector enterprises, they have to be reviewed. And what we are suggesting is, especially those who are making losses, they have to be either privatized, or they have to be reviewed in a way that their loss, they have to come in a sort of in a time frame, they have to be coming into positive instead of being a negative, generating losses. Because of these subsidies to these non-performing public sector enterprises, government of Pakistan is suffering 2% of the GDP every year. It's been giving out to these loss-making enterprises, which is again can be used into health and education and infrastructure, all these sectors which are, you can say, really cash hungry these days. So this is the one recommendation. Secondly, what we are saying is, since the National Finance Commission has a NFC award, they've been introduced, and the decentralization of financial empowerment is already been done. What we are suggesting is that it needs to be further clearly defined, the term of reference, the TORs and roles and responsibilities of both the federal as well as the provincial side. They has to be clearly defined, because there is still a lot of ambiguities between the roles and responsibilities and the term of reference of what is the provincial responsibilities and what are the responsibility of the federal. So this is another thing. Tax collection system needs a serious review. If you see your tax collections for compared to your GDP, is only 12% of your tax collection, a total 12% of your GDP, which is one of the lowest in the region. I think only Afghanistan is lesser than Pakistan. Afghanistan, I think, is their GDP tax collection is 10% of their GDP. So which is, again, shows a poor performance from the government side. Trade liberalization in terms of regional agreements with China, Afghanistan, Iran, Central Asian states, they need to be reviewed, and they need to be, you can say, all these countries should be encouraged to do trade. And similarly, SEFTA is another, you can say, great opportunity Pakistan have. This is a South Asian free trade arrangement within the SAARC countries, South Asian regional countries, and they basically promote the free trade within the region. When you should see the portfolio of the SEFTA, it covers India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. So all these SAARC countries, they've been covered with the SEFTA agreement. So this is something which we can, if government sort of open up its trade policy. Similarly, monetary policy need a clearly reform. Although central bank issued a monetary policy in 2009 and 10, but it needs a review to cater for external risks, especially the global financial markets and uncertainty in the commodity prices in the international markets. These are the sort of key factors which should be incorporated in the monetary policy and should be reviewed more regularly instead. And similarly, energy sector reform, there has to be a policy which should be catered for the risk associated with the price hike in the international market. So they have to sort of come up with clear policy where they can say that, okay, in terms of if the prices goes up in the international market, similarly you have to raise the prices, because this is another thing, because if government is paying subsidies to the energy sector and the growth is not competing, that really shows that the government have to borrow from the local market. So which shows that because of this, you can say, subsidies, government have to borrow it from the local banks and sometimes from the international institutions. And that actually sort of put more pressure on the government sort of. So what we are suggesting is just to have to review and reform the energy sector as well. So this is primarily what we actually are suggesting to the government of Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farzand Ali, the Deputy Regional Director, PRMIA, Lahore, Islamabad Chapter.